1997 was a real year of change for WWE as they began discovering the attitude that would later lead to unprecedented success and said goodbye to a stalwart of the previous generation. Well, it wasn't exactly a heartfelt send-off as much as it was getting thrown out of the building and having your keycard taken off you. At the time, there was the belief that such an action was necessary as WWE were bang in the middle of a war. Well, it wasn't exactly a proper war or anything, more of a competition for ratings between two wrestling companies. But still, it was intense, and WWE knew in '97 that they needed to do something in an attempt to turn the tide. And what a roster full of soldiers in spandex they had, with established names like Bret Hart, before his unceremonious departure, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker being chased by Mick Foley and Steve Austin. The envelope was pushed with acts like Goldust, DX and the Nation of Domination, while storylines got racier with added reality and some white-knuckle content that made the censors sweat. In 1997, WWE produced 13 order-only events, and you can really see how much the product dramatically changed within the course of 12 months by watching them. Which I did, because if there's one thing I love, it's Godwins and Los Boricuas matches. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and this is every WWE pay-per-view of 1997 ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 13, D-Generation X. WWE decided to end their year with a pay-per-view named after one of their hottest, most attitudinal acts. Naturally, the leader of the group would be in action and headlining, defending the WWE title against Ken Shamrock. A match between the Heartbreak Kid and the world's most dangerous man is an intriguing styles clash on paper, but in execution, it was just sort of okay. At almost 20 minutes long, it probably could have had 4 or 5 chopped off, since Kenny's experience level meant that he wasn't quite ready for that length of main event match. And the DQ finish in the main event of a pay-per-view is just about always inexcusable, though the post-match return of Owen Hart was a bright spot. A poor way to end a dreadful show, there wasn't much to celebrate here. Another degenerate, Triple H, was also in action on the card, beating Sergeant Slaughter in a boot camp match that was also way too long and might have been good had the Slaughter of 1987 been wrestling in it. Elsewhere, Steve Austin continued his path of destruction, defending the Intercontinental title against The Rock in a feisty match that was necessarily short due to Stone Cold's physical condition. Jeff Jarrett beat The Undertaker by disqualification in a short, lifeless match when Kane ran in. There was another DQ finish in the New Age Outlaws vs Legion of Doom tag team title match, which wasn't very good anyway. And yet another disqualification in the Tough Man contest between Mark Merrow and freak show boxer Butterbean. Los Boricuas beat the Disciples of Apocalypse. Sorry, fell asleep for a second there. And Taka Michinoku won the vacant light heavyweight title in a tournament final against Brian Grandmaster Sexay Christopher. Fine for what it was, and it had its bright spots, but I don't think it was keeping Rey Mysterio and the rest of the WCW boys up at night. Number 12, Survivor Series. You might have heard of this one. The ending to the WWE title match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the main event of the 1997 Survivor Series has, understandably, overshadowed the rest of the show. The match itself was a good one, markedly different from the previous bouts between the pair, but nobody is going to remember it for anything to do with its quality. The Montreal Screwjob has been dissected to death over the last 20 plus years, and really, what else can be said about it at this point? It happened. Some people say that Vince was in the right, and those people are wrong, and some say the Hitman deserved way better considering his years of dutiful service to the company. But it happened, and it happened on a show that, overall, was not a good one at all. Subtitled Gang Rules, most of the undercard was focused on matches pitting the company's warring factions against one another, and there were 4 4-on-4 traditional Survivor Series tags in total. In the first, the Godwins and the New Age Outlaws beat the Headbangers and the New Blackjacks in a crap match. The Outlaws survived. The Truth Commission then beat the DOA in another anti-classic. The Interrogator, aka Kurgan, survived. Team Canada's victory over Team USA, Goldust, Mark Merrow, Steve Blackman and Vader, was much more like it, with lots of good action and stories being told throughout. The British Bulldog survived. And the Nation of Domination fell to the team of Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson and the Road Warriors in another decent scrap. The world's most dangerous man survived this one. Elsewhere, Kane beat Mankind in a so-so encounter that had a couple of big bumps in it, and Stone Cold Steve Austin beat Owen Hart to reclaim the IC title in another necessarily short match that brought closure to their rivalry. Number 11, King of the Ring. The story goes that Triple H was in line to become King of the Ring in 1996 before the whole curtain call incident put him in the doghouse, and the honour was instead bestowed upon Steve Austin, who cut a memorable little promo that night, which led to the best-selling t-shirt in the business's history, launching him into the stratosphere in the process. Oh well, you live and you learn, to respect kayfabe, I suppose. The game finally ascended to the throne in 97, a year later than planned, beating Mankind in a disappointing final match, having already beaten Ahmed Johnson earlier in the night. Mankind, meanwhile, had moved past Jerry Lawler. Neither of the semi-finals was good either, but there was at least one big highlight on the show in the form of Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels' Forgotten Classic. A damn fine back-and-forth wrestling contest. HBK and the Texas Rattlesnake, who were co-holders of the tag team titles at the time, looked more than a few levels above anyone else on the card, and the only thing letting the bout down was a, you guessed it, lame disqualification finish. No hope of following such quality was The Undertaker's WWE title defense against Farouk, which was disjointed and didn't really have any heat, since nobody bought the Nation of Domination leader as having a chance of winning. After the bout, Ahmed Johnson attacked the Dead Man, setting up a match that, sadly, never wound up transpiring due to injuries. In other happenings, Goldust beat Crush in a feeble match, and Owen, Bulldog and Jim bested Sid and the LOD in a match that really should have been better given the talent involved. Number 10, Royal Rumble. The prospect of local boy Shawn Michaels winning the WWE title was enough to pack about 60,000 fans into San Antonio, Texas's Alamo Dome for the 97 Royal Rumble. Having lost the strap to Sid at the 1996 Survivor Series, the showstopper was geared up for the rematch and got the job done, beating the master and ruler of the world in a fair bout. Michaels, having climbed to the top of the mountain in front of his statesman in the main event of a major pay-per-view, would sadly lose his smile just a few weeks later. As for the rest of the show, the supporting card was of substandard quality and the Rumble itself was middling. Though it had the right result, with Stone Cold Steve Austin going over, the match was sorely lacking in star power. Really, the only ones with a shot at winning were Austin, Undertaker and Bret Hart. I never quite fancied the chances of Cybernetico, Latin Lover or Fake Diesel, you know? Elsewhere, Goldust and Hunter Hearst Helmsley kicked things off with a listless mechanical intercontinental title match. Farouk and Ahmed Johnson ended in a DQ. Vader got a big win over The Undertaker in a match that never really got going. They would have a much stronger one later in the year. And there was a 6-man luchador match featuring the stars of Mexican promotion AAA that went for 10 minutes and felt like 30. 60,000 fans and not one of them cared. You could have heard a piñata drop. Number 9, Bad Blood. A dark cloud hung over Bad Blood due to the tragic passing of Brian Pillman earlier in the day. The loose cannon, who was scheduled to wrestle Goldust on the show, was discovered in his hotel room dead at the age of just 35. It's understandable then that some of the performers, especially his Heart Foundation teammates, may have been a little distracted during the event. If The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels were feeling blue, it sure didn't show in their Hell in a Cell main event. The first Cell match ever was an instant classic as Michaels and Taker went at it hell for leather for close to 30 minutes, bleeding and taking big bumps and doing whatever it took to end a somber show on a real high note. Speaking of, the debut of the long-rumoured Kane at the match's conclusion is still one of the best wrestling debuts ever over 2 decades later. The pick of the undercard was the tag team flag match with WWE champion Bret Hart and the British Bulldog beating Vader and the Patriot. Why did the Patriot need to capture a flag anyway? I thought he was a flag. The rest of the show wasn't up to much. Owen Hart won the Intercontinental title, beating Farouk for the vacant belt in a blah tournament final thanks to interference from the injured Steve Austin, who wanted Owen to win so that he could then beat him for the belt upon his return. The DOA beat Los Boricuas. Sorry, fell asleep again there for a second. The Headbangers and the Godwins had a stinker of a tag team title match. Much better was the Minis match between Max, Mini and Nova and Tarantula and Mosaic, even if it was a little short. Wait, not like that. And in the opener, The Rock, D'Lo Brown and Kama Mustafa beat the LOD in an anemic handicap match. Number 8, WrestleMania 13. The plans for WrestleMania 13 were thrown into disarray when Shawn Michaels misplaced his smile on the road to it, leaving Bret Hart without an opponent and the WWE title scene in flux. The excellence of execution was then parlayed into a program with the red-hot Stone Cold Steve Austin, with the two clashing in a submission match at the Showcase of the Immortals. I tell you what, I know he's one of the best ever and all that, but if HBK getting a bit sad resulted in more matches like this, I'd have been happy if he walked around with a permanent frown. And that is because Austin Hart was a bona fide barn burner, one of the best WrestleMania matches ever, and really, the match that set the course for the next year of both men's careers. Bret won a bloody and brutal bout, but Austin came out of the match a hero when he refused to tap out to the sharpshooter, passing out while wearing the Crimson Mask in an act that would make John Wayne, Superman, and that bloke that bought me a pint after I lost my wallet on a night out very jealous indeed. The Undertaker and Sid sadly didn't have a hope of matching it, as the Phenom won the WWE title and extended his WrestleMania winning streak. Speaking of streaks, rumour has it that Sid pooped his pants on the Tombstone finish, which, if true, is easily the most interesting thing about one of the weakest Mania main events ever. Elsewhere, a rare highlight was provided by the fun Chicago Street Fight six-man tag between Ahmed Johnson and the Legion of Doom and Nation members Farouk, Savio Vega, and Crush. Bulldog and Owen Hart's tag team title defense against Mankind and Vader went to a dissatisfying double countout. Triple H's victory over Goldust was dull. Duller still was Rocky Maevia's Intercontinental title defense over the Sultan. And the four-team opener between the Godwins, the Headbangers, the New Blackjacks, and Doug Furnace and Philip LaFon was technically fine, but not very exciting. Number 7, A Cold Day in Hell. On the back of his WrestleMania 13 babyface turn, Steve Austin continued his meteoric rise at the 15th In Your House pay-per-view, A Cold Day in Hell. Battling The Undertaker in their first really big showdown against each other, Austin looked like a star more than capable of holding the title before ultimately falling victim to the Tombstone. Importantly, the post-match brawl between the Bionic Redneck and the Hart Foundation set the table for a sizzling summer series. As for other highlights, Ken Shamrock made his WWE in-ring wrestling debut, having acted as a guest referee for Austin Brett at WrestleMania 13. Here he took on Vader in a no-holds-barred match. One of the stiffest and most intense WWE matches ever. It was a different style than fans were used to, but it was great in its own unique way, and the perfect choice to introduce the former UFC standout to a new audience. The rest of the event wasn't exactly a must-watch, but it's only a couple of hours long, and the final two matches are well worth seeking out. Triple H beat Flash Funk in a serviceable opener. Mankind beat Rocky Maivia by submission as the clean-cut blue chipper experiment finally met its merciful end. These two would have much better matches in different circumstances in future years. And Ahmed Johnson took on the early version of the Nation of Domination in a rather pointless gauntlet match. Number 6, Ground Zero. A month before they had the initial Hell in a Cell match, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels clashed one-on-one in the main event of Ground Zero, the 17th In Your House presentation. It was another exemplary effort from the two legends, a great way to properly kick off a long and storied rivalry. Regrettably though, the finish was another lame no contest after a ton of interference and a clown car full of referees were bumped. But at least the ending led to the Cell match. Oh, and the dead man's massive dive over the ropes onto a pile of bodies somewhat redeemed it too. In the other big match on the show, Bret Hart defended his newly won WWE title against the Patriots in the Masked Man's best ever match. The Hitman, ever the good winner, snapped the American flag and choked the Patriot out with it after the decision. As for the rest of the show, Brian Pillman beat Goldust in a match that was miraculously quite good, considering the shape the rapidly deteriorating Pillman was in at this point. Brian Christopher vs. Scott Putski was cut short due to an injury to the son of Ivan, which just about ended his WWE career. The former nation collided as Savio Vega beat Farouk and Crush in a lousy triple threat match. Max Mini beat El Torito in a really fun exhibition of pint-sized lucha. The Headbangers beat Owen Hart and Bulldog, the Godwins and the LOD to win the WWE Tag Team titles in a four-way. And an injured Steve Austin was forced to vacate his WWE Tag Team title belt. He took it rather well, naturally. Number 5, Revenge of the Taker. Fresh off the lackluster WrestleMania 13, WWE put together an In Your House event that was much more enjoyable, even if one of the rematches from the granddaddy of them all didn't quite measure up. In the main event of Revenge of the Taker, Bret Hart and Steve Austin once again clashed heads, and though their match was good, it lacked the brutality or intensity of their iconic WrestleMania meeting. It was still a damn fine way to cap off what had been an entertaining B-level pay-per-view, mind you, and helped move the storyline along nicely as Stone Cold moved towards a rivalry with not only Bret, but the rest of the Hart Foundation. In the other main match, The Undertaker defended his WWE title against Mankind in a strong contest with the customary gnarly bumps from St. Mick. After the match, Taker unleashed a fireball in Paul Bearer's face. Bit extreme, isn't it? I mean, he is your dad and everything. I was angry at my dad once, but I didn't try and burn burn his face off or anything. I just hid his stash of Playboy magazines, after I'd thoroughly read them, of course. Not too much to get excited about underneath the double main event, with a shenanigan-filled tag team title match between Owen and Bulldog and the LOD going to a predictable DQ, and the real Double J, Jesse James and Rockabilly, two characters aimlessly drifting along toward nothing, squaring off before record levels of apathy. Number 4, Final 4. With Shawn Michaels having a case of the boo-boos and not feeling up to carrying the WWE title, a new champion was decided at Final 4, the pay-per-view between Royal Rumble and Wrestlemania, and as the name suggests, the men vying for the top prize were the last 4 men in the Rumble match. These were Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, and Vader. Only the Mastodon wasn't one of the last 4 in that match, Fake Diesel was. But I mean, come on, you know. I love Mayor Glenn as much as the next guy, but Vader was a definite upgrade here. The match itself was a total show stealer and one of the very best matches of the year, with excellent performances by everyone involved and almost non-stop action for the 25-minute duration. The match stipulations indicated that somebody could be eliminated by pinfall, submission, or being thrown over the top rope. In the end, it was the Pink and Black Attack who had his hand raised, although he would lose the title to Sid the next night on Raw. Elsewhere, Owen Hart and Davey Boy fought Doug Furness and Philip LaFon in a vastly underrated tag team title match. Shame about that DQ finish, but if I had a pound for every time I said that about 1997, I'd probably have about £1 million. Rocky Maivia retained his IC title against Hunter Hearst Helmsley in a fair match. Obviously, this wasn't the cerebral assassin and the Brahma Bull of the year 2000 out there, but you could certainly see the potential. The Nation of Domination beat the odd trio of Flash Funk, Bart Gunn and Goldust in a short and inoffensive match, and Mark Mero beat Leif Cassidy in a competent opener. Number 3, One Night Only. It didn't have the spectacle of a SummerSlam 92 or anything, but One Night Only 97 was, as far as in-ring action is concerned, WWE's best UK exclusive pay-per-view ever, with the heavy hitters present and at least 4 great matches. The first of those great matches came in the opener, as Dude Love fought Triple H, the third time the two men would kick off a pay-per-view in 97, and on balance, the best one of the bunch. That spirited scrap was unfortunately followed by a Tiger Ali Singh match, as the bloke who only ever seemed to wrestle on international events beat Leif Cassidy in a rotten contest. The Headbangers then defended their tag team titles in a shockingly good match against Los Boricuas members Savio Vega and Miguel Perez. I know the Headbangers aren't the most fondly remembered act from this era, but they were over and certainly put the effort in when called for. There wasn't a great deal of effort in the Flash Funk vs Patriot match that came next, even though it certainly wasn't bad or anything, just kind of there. Ditto the LOD versus the Godwins, which was formula stuff all the way, but once again wasn't bad. Things picked up nicely with Vader's victory over Owen Hart, a great big man versus little man match to savor. Then in the first main event, Bret Hart walked out still WWE champion after The Undertaker was DQ'd at the end of their epic. This was Bret's last truly great match before the unfortunate events at Survivor Series, as he put in a hell of a shift in a bid to entertain the UK fans, telling a great story in the process. And in the main event, Shawn Michaels controversially won the European title from the British Bulldog in a grand match. Different sources vary on what happened leading to the decision to make HBK the champ, with some saying it was done to put heat on Michaels as he geared up for a WWE title match with Bret. And heat is exactly what he got, at least on this night in Birmingham, as the fans nearly rioted at the result, which may have left a bad taste in the mouths of some, but everything up to the final bell was gravy. Number 2, SummerSlam. The Hart Foundation were in full swing heading into SummerSlam 1997 as they ramped up their anti-American sentiment and targeted the likes of Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Goldust, and Ken Shamrock. That led to a series of matches at the pay-per-view, each with its own unique stipulation in place. In the first of those matches, Brian Pillman challenged the Bizarre One to a match where the loser would have to wear a dress. It was a very bad match and the worst thing on the show, with Pillman really struggling physically, but thankfully the event itself would get better as it wore on. In the second of those special stipulation matches, the British Bulldog retained the European title against Ken Shamrock by disqualification in a match where Davey Boy would have to eat dog food if he lost. Not a classic, but the finish certainly made Kenny look like a badass. The third match in this mini-series was gearing up to be a classic before disaster struck and Steve Austin was dropped on his head by Owen Hart in a sit-out tombstone piledriver gone wrong. Not about to honour the stipulation and kiss the Rocket's backside if he lost, Stone Cold somehow managed the worst roll-up ever to win the match and retain the Intercontinental title. Everything until the unfortunate injury was gold here. And in the final match and the show's main event, Bret Hart beat The Undertaker to win the WWE title thanks to an inadvertent assist by special guest ref Shawn Michaels. A slow-burning classic, this one told a great story, had buckets full of intensity, and built to the shocking conclusion. As for the rest of the show, there was a mixture of good and bad. In terms of the good, the event opened with a bang as Mankind beat Triple H in a bruising cage match. LOD beat the Godwins in a plodding but not terrible match. And Los Boricuas beat the Disciples of Apocalypse in a typical 8-man tag outing. Snore. Number 1, Canadian Stampede. 4 matches, all of them certified belters, all done within a tight 2 hours. What not to love, you ungrateful marks? The best of the in-your-house events, and the last one with a running time below 3 hours, the best pay-per-view of 1997, and to be honest, one of the best WWE events ever, Canadian Stampede didn't come close to putting a foot wrong the entire time it was on the air. The main attraction was the blockbuster 10-man tag team match pitting the entire Hart Foundation against Steve Austin, the LOD, Goldust, and Ken Shamrock. A raucous Calgary crowd were on hand to cheer Owen, Davey Boy, Pillman, Neidhart, and especially Bret as they battled a fivesome who, if this show had taken place in the United States, would have been all-conquering heroes. This bout is a 25-minute stunner full of intense brawling, storytelling, and impeccable character work as several feuds intermingled and everyone got a chance to shine. In the end, it was the hometown heroes who got the win, with Owen rolling up Austin with a handful of tights at the end of a big melee. The post-match, with the Foundation celebrating with the entire Hart family, is probably the last truly happy moment for one of wrestling's great dynasties. A likely main event on any other show, The Undertaker defended his WWE title against Vader in a titanic clash that blew their weak Royal Rumble effort out of the water. Taka Michinoku did the honors for his fellow countryman, the great Sasuke, in what is one of WWE's best light heavyweight matches ever. A great showcase for the Michinoku Pro style of wrestling, Sasuke and Taka won over a crowd who were slow to warm to it due to their talent and sheer force of will. Put this one up against anything that was on Nitro at the time. And Triple H and Mankind battled to a double countout in the opener as they showed their natural chemistry with one another and began the show in some style. A show you really ought to see at least once, everything is entertaining, and there isn't a Disciple of Apocalypse or Los Boricua in sight.